Nuclear weapons are both a gift and a curse to humanity. On one hand, it's hard to argue that they have reduced the number of global conflicts. However, on the other hand, the existence of nuclear weapons could lead to the extinction of humanity. But just how many of these weapons are there on the planet? What is a nuclear winter as depicted in dozens of movies and games? And is it possible? Sit back comfortably, friends, as we are about to dive into the so-called nuclear club, an unofficial term for a group of countries that possess independently developed warheads. Within the club, there's a division into two categories. One, the so-called old nuclear powers, states that signed the treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons in 1968. There are 5 such countries: the USA, the United Kingdom, France, China, and the USSR, later replaced by Russia in the agreement. These 5 nations are considered the only legitimate possessors of nuclear weapons. At least, that's how they view themselves. However, there are at least 4 almost certain and a couple of hypothetical states that have developed their own nuclear weapons and declare that conventions signed by other countries do not apply to them. But more on that later. Let's first look at the nuclear potential of the USA. The country was the first in the world to test an atomic bomb in 1945 and is the only one to have used them in combat. Exact numbers, of course, are not available, but it is believed that the Americans currently have about 5,500 nuclear weapons. Of these, around 1,400 are active, 1,800 are in reserve, and 1,800 are being prepared for dismantlement, partly under the terms of nuclear arms reduction treaties and partly because maintaining one warhead costs $75 million, an insanely expensive endeavor. And to turn the planet into a stone age, 1,000 warheads would be more than enough. Therefore, their number is being reduced, though at the peak of the Cold War in the mid-60s, the U.S. had about 30,000 nuclear weapons. The most powerful of the current warheads is the B-83, with a yield of 1.2 megatons, 60 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The B-83 weighs just over a ton, and the U.S. has about 650 of them. On the other end of the spectrum is the warhead W-76-2 with a yield of 5 kilotons, 4 times weaker than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. However, do not relax. W-76-2 is actually a new development, as times of muscle flexing and tsar bombas are long gone. Now still, the ability to evade anti-missile systems and efficiency are in the spotlight, and W-76-2 meets all these criteria. They are used on submarines, which are known to be the most difficult to detect and dangerous weapon of a hypothetical nuclear war. The next member of the club is the USSR, whose nuclear arsenal was inherited by Russia. It conducted its first test in 1949 and holds the absolute record for explosion power with the Tsar Bomba, with a yield of 58 to 100 megatons according to various estimates. Currently, Russia has about 6,000 warheads, of which 1,500 are also being dismantled. As with the U.S., romanticizing the situation is not advisable, as both countries are inventing new and more effective bombs. However, the specifics of Russia's arsenal are somewhat murkier. There are rumors of the RS-28 bomb, codenamed Satan, which allegedly has a yield of 50 megatons. There are even whispers of the Status 6's warheads, which, if true, boggle the mind with possible destruction. The third classic nuclear club member is the United Kingdom. Its tests took place in 1952, and it is believed to have just over 200 warheads. A typical example is the Holbrook, with a yield of up to 100 megatons mounted on Trident II missiles. The UK is also one of the few countries planning to increase its nuclear arsenal, primarily using it on submarines. It's also worth noting that almost the entire production chain of the UK's nuclear weapons is closely tied to the Americans, who are also the creators of the Trident II missile. France, fourth in order of tests and third in total number of weapons, conducted its bomb test in 1960 and now possesses around 300 bombs and warheads. A classic example is the TN-75, with a yield of 150 kilotons. Unlike the British, the French have their own missiles manufactured not so long ago. Just last year, France announced successful tests of the M51 missile launched from a submarine, and the last official member of the nuclear club is China, also the most mysterious. The first test in 1964 is well documented documented, but other information is shrouded in secrecy. It is believed that China has about 350 warheads, with the most powerful being the DF-31, with a yield of 1 megaton, quite serious. However, rumors suggest China might have up to 1,000 bombs, and the true power of some remains unknown to the public. These 5 countries decided in 1968 that no one else but them should have nuclear weapons, which naturally surprised other states, leading to their own nuclear developments. India tested its weapon in 1974 and 1998, possessing a current arsenal of 156 warheads. Pakistan, not to be outdone by its neighbor, tested its weapon in 1998, having a roughly similar potential. North Korea and Israel stand out on the list as one announced possession of nuclear weapons but was not believed, and the other, according to global intelligence, made its atomic bomb in the 60s but denies everything. Lastly, South Africa developed charges and was part of the nuclear club for a while, but voluntarily abandoned everything in 1996. In total, there are about 13,000 nuclear weapons on the planet, possibly 30% more due to secret developments and unofficial deliveries. What if they were all launched simultaneously? We discussed this in one of our previous videos. In short, no splitting of the planet or global extinction would occur. Earth's volcanoes and tectonic plates mean even all nuclear weapons would have a minimal effect on a cosmic scale. But what about nuclear winter? This question is more complex. Nuclear winter is a hypothetical state of the planet following a full-scale nuclear war. It's believed that smoke and soot from explosions and fires would cover the Earth in darkness, radically changing the climate. Initially, the concept of nuclear winter was purely artistic, invented by Carl Sagan. His intentions were noble, using his fame to influence the masses and instill the idea that nuclear weapons are bad. However, as media and technology evolved, the need arose to build mathematical models and check the theory of nuclear winter with facts. As always, humanity is divided on this issue. During the Cold War, academician Moiseev and his American colleagues conducted 2 parallel studies, and it seemed mathematics confirmed nuclear winter would occur with nuclear explosion powers up to 100 megatons. Solar radiation would decrease 40-fold, and atmosphere cleansing would take 6 months. In some areas, temperatures could drop by up to 30 degrees, a bleak situation indeed. Calculations even predicted a year without sunlight, as in 1816. Further research in 2007 and 2008 only worsened the picture, predicting 10 years of an ice age, famine, and epidemics. However, skeptics emerged with convincing arguments. For example, the Tambora volcano, which erupted in 1815 with a yield of 150 to 800 megatons in TNT equivalent, did not cause global temperature to fall more than a relatively mild 2 degrees. This damaged agriculture significantly but didn't lead to human extinction. It's worth noting that a volcano isn't the same as bombs, as nuclear war would also release our burnt socks and soot from everything that can burn. But even here, there's a catch. Before the war in Iraq, Carl Sagan, using the same model of a global nuclear war, predicted nuclear winter from burning oil wells. In reality, 3 million barrels of oil and 70 million cubic meters of gas burned, but the effect was far from apocalyptic. In reality, humanity still struggles significantly with climate models, partly because most are based on events from the distant past, which might have been misinterpreted. Many modern calculations are doomed to fail from the start. Summarizing, nuclear winter seems not so likely and not as critical, especially considering we're discussing a global nuclear war that would destroy cities, industries, and entire countries. This effect would be much more noticeable and terrifying than a few degrees cooling across the planet, and no sane person would want to verify whether this is true. Until we meet again, friends,